In a small mountain village on the distant world of Astra 9, silence ruled most nights. The stars shone brighter there than anywhere else, and the winds carried the soft hum of the old observatory that sat just beyond the village border. It was in that quiet world, under a raging storm, that three sisters were born. Their mother, Evelyn, cried out as thunder shook the walls, and lightning flashed through the window of their small wooden house. The power failed, the lamps flickered, and for a moment, everything went dark. Then, as the midwife gasped, light filled the room, but not from the storm. It came from the newborns themselves. Their names were Lyra, Mira, and Nova. Three tiny girls, their eyes glowing faintly like stars. When the villagers outside saw the light through the window, whispers spread like fire. "A curse," they said. "No child should shine like that." Evelyn and Thomas, their father, heard those whispers. The fear in people's voices made them promise one thing: to protect their daughters no matter what. As the years passed, the sisters grew quickly, and their strange gift, or curse, grew with them. When Lyra laughed, lights flickered all across the house. When Mira cried, the air vibrated with a soft hum, like music from another world. And when Nova dreamed, strange shapes appeared in the sky above their home, swirling patterns of color no one could explain. The villagers began to avoid their family. Some left offerings by their door at night, hoping to keep away bad luck. Others crossed the street when Evelyn walked through the market. Only a few brave souls dared to greet her kindly. Thomas tried to keep his daughters hidden from the world. He built strong shutters on the windows and told the girls stories to keep them inside. "The world isn't ready for you yet," he would say. "But one day it will be." The sisters never argued. They loved their parents deeply. But every night, when the world was asleep, they would sneak out to the old observatory that sat on the hill just beyond the edge of the village. The building had been abandoned for years, its walls cracked, its telescope rusted and half broken. Yet to them it was magic. There, under the endless sea of stars, they felt something stir deep within. Lyra, the eldest, was quiet and thoughtful. She always watched the sky with curiosity, sketching constellations in her notebook. "The stars look alive," she often said softly, "like they're watching us back." Mira, the middle sister, was bold and curious. She often climbed to the top of the observatory's dome, laughing at the wind that whipped her hair. "If they're watching," she'd shout, "then I hope they like what they see." Nova, the youngest, was different. She didn't speak much. But when she placed her hand on the metal of the telescope, it would begin to hum, faintly glowing, just like her eyes. Sometimes the humming turned into a soft voice, not quite words but a rhythm, a pattern that almost felt like music. It came from the stars themselves, she thought. One night, when the moon was hidden and the village slept, Nova whispered to her sisters, "They're calling us." Lyra turned to her, puzzled. "Who?" "The stars," Nova said simply. "They want us to find them." Mira laughed gently, thinking it was just a child's dream. But Lyra didn't laugh. She had felt it too, the pull, the quiet hum in her chest when she looked at the night sky. The next morning when they returned home, Thomas was waiting. His face was pale. "You can't go there anymore," he said sharply. "The villagers are talking again. They think you bring storms." Evelyn stood behind him, tears in her eyes. "Please, girls. Just stay inside for a while." The sisters obeyed, but in their hearts, something had changed. They could no longer pretend the stars weren't calling. Days passed. The storms grew stronger. Every time thunder echoed through the mountains, the sisters' eyes glowed brighter. The villagers grew restless, whispering that the cursed girls were angering the gods of the sky. Then one evening, as the rain poured and wind howled, the three sisters sat together in their small room. The lights flickered again, but this time they didn't return. Instead, the air shimmered with a soft silver glow. Nova placed her hand on Lyra's and Myra's. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. Lyra nodded slowly. "It's warmth. It feels like home." Suddenly, through the rain, a strange sound filled the air, not thunder but a deep humming coming from the direction of the observatory. Mira stood. "It's them," she said, her voice trembling. "The stars." Before their parents could stop them, the sisters ran into the storm, barefoot, lightning flashing all around. The village bells rang as the wind howled, and people shouted for them to come back. But the sisters didn't hear. They climbed the hill, rain soaking their dresses, until they reached the observatory. The door creaked open on its own, and inside, the telescope pulsed with blue light. Nova stepped closer, her heart pounding. "It's alive," she said softly. The telescope shifted, turning toward the sky by itself. The roof panels opened, revealing a dark sky filled with stars. Then, something incredible happened. the stars began to move. They rearranged themselves into a pattern, 3 bright points of light connected by silver lines, forming the shape of 3 figures holding hands. Lyra gasped. "It's us." Myra's voice was barely a whisper. "What does it mean?" Before anyone could answer, a bolt of lightning struck the ground just outside. The air crackled, and from the telescope's core came a single beam of light, wrapping around the sisters like a protective cocoon. Evelyn and Thomas arrived moments later, calling their names through the storm. But when they reached the observatory, all they found was silence. The light faded. The rain stopped. The air smelled like ozone and starlight. On the floor where their daughters had stood, 3 glowing symbols shimmered faintly, 3 small constellations each shaped like a star. Evelyn fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Thomas held her close, whispering, "They're not gone. They've gone home." And far above the clouds, 3 new stars appeared in the night sky, brighter than any others, glowing softly over Astra 9. For the villagers below, it was the first night they looked up and saw beauty instead of fear. The days after the storm were quiet but heavy with mystery. The villagers avoided the sisters more than ever, crossing the street when they passed and whispering in fear when they saw their faintly glowing eyes. Evelyn tried to comfort her daughters, insisting that life would return to normal, but deep down she knew nothing would ever be the same. The girls had changed. Their connection to the stars, once soft and mysterious, now felt stronger, like something was calling them louder each night. The old observatory no longer frightened them. It felt like part of who they were. One cold evening, the wind carried strange sounds from the hills. It wasn't thunder. It was rhythmic, almost musical, like a heartbeat made of light. Nova, the youngest, tilted her head and listened. "It's the same hum from the telescope," she said. Lyra looked uneasy. "Maybe it's just the storm." But Mira shook her head. "No, it's a pattern. It's talking." That night, when everyone was asleep, Nova sneaked into the observatory with an old radio she had found among her father's tools. It was a battered device with a broken antenna and cracked dials, but she felt strangely drawn to it. She placed it on the old telescope's table, turned the knob slowly and waited. At first there was only static, a soft hiss that filled the quiet air. Then suddenly a pulse. Beep, beep beep, beep. Nova froze. It wasn't random noise. It was too precise, too deliberate. She called her sisters. "Come quickly." Lyra and Mira ran to her side, wrapping themselves in blankets as they stared at the flickering light on the radio. Mira grabbed a pencil and paper and began writing the sounds down. Beep, pause, 2 beeps, pause, 1 long tone. "It's a code," Mira said. "Like a signal." Lyra leaned closer, her heart racing. "I've seen this pattern before. In my astronomy books, it's binary." For the next hour they listened and translated carefully. When the final tones ended, Lyra stared at the page in disbelief. The message was short, simple, and impossible. "You are not cursed. You are chosen." The sisters sat in silence, the words echoing in their minds. "Chosen for what?" Mira whispered. Lyra shook her head. "I don't know. But whoever sent this knows who we are." The next day the message wouldn't leave their thoughts. The radio stayed silent, but the air felt charged like the storm before lightning. That evening, as the sun set behind the snowy peaks, Nova noticed something strange. The hum was back. This time it came from the forest beyond their house. "We should go," she said. Lyra hesitated. "At night? It's dangerous." But Mira, ever the brave one, grabbed her coat. "Dangerous or not, I want answers. We've hidden long enough." The sisters followed the sound through the tall trees, their boots crunching in the snow. The deeper they went, the stronger the hum became. It was rhythmic now, vibrating through the ground, guiding them forward. After what felt like hours, they reached a small clearing. At its center was something buried under the earth, a round shape of metal half covered by roots and frost. Faint blue light pulsed through the cracks in its surface. Mira brushed away the dirt, revealing smooth metal engraved with symbols none of them recognized. "It's not from here," she said softly. Lyra's breath caught. "Do you think it fell from the sky?" Nova knelt beside it, pressing her palm against the cold metal. The moment she did, the ground shuddered. The air filled with a deep tone, not unlike the one they had heard on the radio. Then came a voice, clear, calm, and powerful. "Welcome, daughters of the astral line." The sisters froze. The sound didn't come from the air. It came from inside their minds. Lyra's voice trembled. Did you hear that?" "Yes," Mira whispered. "It spoke to all of us." The light from the metal grew brighter, outlining a symbol, 3 interlocking stars. The same shape that had appeared in the sky the night they vanished during the storm. The voice spoke again, "Your world has forgotten us. But our bond remains. The stars remember their children." Lyra stepped back, shaking her head. "This isn't possible. Machines don't talk like this." Nova's eyes were wide. "It's not a machine. It's alive." The ground rumbled again and a section of the metal structure opened like a doorway. Inside was darkness, but it pulsed faintly with light, a heartbeat in the earth. "Enter astral daughters," the voice said. "Your time has come." Fear and wonder battled in their hearts. Mira was the first to move. "We came this far. I'm not turning back." Lyra grabbed her hand. "Wait. What if it's dangerous?" Nova looked between them, her small face glowing in the reflected light. "What if it's the truth?" The 3 sisters stepped inside. The space beneath the ground was larger than they imagined, a vast chamber made of metal and crystal. The walls shimmered like mirrors, showing stars instead of reflections. Streams of blue light flowed through the air, humming softly as though the room itself were breathing. At the center stood a pillar of glass. Inside it floated a sphere, spinning slowly, filled with tiny points of light. "It's like the night sky," Mira whispered. Lyra reached out and the sphere glowed brighter. The same voice filled the chamber again. "Long ago, before your kind built villages and forgot the sky, we sent pieces of our light to guide the future. You are those pieces. You carry the power of the astral line, the last connection between stars and humankind." The sisters looked at each other in awe. Nova stepped closer. "Why us?" The voice softened. "Because your world is fading. When humans turned away from the stars, they began to lose their light. You were born to remind them what they are, not cursed but chosen to restore the link." The sisters felt warmth spread through their hands, the same glow returning to their eyes. For the first time they didn't fear it. They embraced it. When they left the chamber hours later, the forest was still and silent. The moonlight fell across their faces and their eyes sparkled faintly, no longer like a curse but like a promise. Back at home, Evelyn and Thomas waited at the door, terrified. But when they saw their daughters walking from the woods, surrounded by faint light, something changed in their faces. Evelyn whispered, "My girls, what happened to you?" Lyra smiled softly. "We're not cursed, Mother. We're chosen." The night seemed to listen. The stars above Astra 9 glowed brighter than ever before. And far beyond the village, deep in the forest, the buried structure hummed again, as if awakening after a long, long sleep. The sisters had only just begun to uncover their truth. The air inside the underground chamber pulsed with soft blue light, wrapping the sisters in warmth that felt alive. The hum of the walls grew steady, like the beating of a great heart. In the center of the room, the glowing sphere began to spin faster, and waves of light spread across the floor, showing shifting shapes, lines, stars, and moving shadows. The sisters stood together, their faces pale but filled with wonder. "What is this place?" Mira whispered. The voice, calm and deep, echoed again. "This is the heart of Astra. It holds the memories of your kind, everything humanity once knew before it turned away from the stars." Lyra stepped closer to the sphere. Her reflection shone on its surface, but it wasn't just her face she saw, it was others. Men and women dressed in silver suits, walking beneath skies filled with moons. There were children running across bridges of light, laughter echoing in the distance. Ships, vast and beautiful, glided through oceans of stars. The light flickered again and suddenly the images changed. The ships dimmed. The laughter faded. Cities in the stars fell silent, swallowed by shadows. Nova gasped. "What happened to them?" "They forgot," the voice said sadly. "Humans once lived among the stars. They spoke with light and traveled through the void. But they grew proud and fearful. They turned their eyes downward and broke their connection. They forgot who they were." Mira frowned. "And now you want us to fix that?" "Not fix," the voice replied gently. "Remember, you 3 carry what was left behind, the signal that connects heart to heart, mind to mind. It lives in your blood, in your light. You are the key to reconnect humanity, not to the machines but to each other." The sphere pulsed and beams of light wrapped around each sister. Lyra felt warmth bloom in her chest. Myra's hands glowed faintly, threads of gold dancing around her fingers. Nova, the youngest, felt tears fall down her cheeks, but they sparkled like tiny stars before vanishing. Lyra stepped back, trembling. "Reconnect to each other? And to the stars. What does that mean? The voice grew softer, almost like a whisper of wind. The stars never left you. They wait for you to look up again. The light you carry is not power. It is remembrance. It will guide the lost ones home. Silence filled the chamber. The sisters looked at one another, afraid, amazed, uncertain. Finally Mira said, "Then we're not cursed." "No," the voice answered. "You were never cursed. You were born as bridges, between the forgotten and the infinite." For a long moment none of them spoke. The light dimmed slightly and the air settled. The hum grew gentle, steady like a lullaby. Lyra turned to her sisters. "We should go home." "But what if this place disappears?" Nova asked softly. "It won't," Lyra said. "It's part of us now." They climbed out of the glowing chamber, their hands still warm with light. The forest seemed different that night, quieter, almost respectful. The snow shimmered faintly beneath the stars as if the world itself knew what they had seen. When they reached the edge of the village, the old church bell tolled in the distance. People were still afraid of them, whispering behind doors, but now the sisters felt no shame. Their mother, Evelyn, was waiting outside their home. Her eyes widened as she saw the faint light still glowing beneath their skin. "What did you do?" she whispered, stepping closer. Lyra took her mother's hands gently. "We learned the truth. We're not cursed. We were chosen to bring something back." Thomas came to the doorway, his face tired but kind. "Back? Bring what back?" "Hope," Nova said softly. Her voice was steady, stronger than before. That night, the sisters returned to the observatory. The telescope that had once felt cold now hummed gently, like it recognized them. Lyra turned the dials, pointing it toward the brightest star in the northern sky. The air shimmered faintly as they adjusted the lenses. "Do you think anyone is out there?" Mira asked. Lyra smiled. "I think they're waiting." Nova switched on the radio again. Instead of static, a single soft tone played, slow, rhythmic, warm. "Beep, beep, beep, beep." "It's the same pattern," Mira whispered. "The message." But this time, when Lyra translated the tones, the words were different. "Signal received." Her eyes widened. "They heard us." The sisters looked at each other, their hearts pounding. For the first time in generations, Astra 9 wasn't silent anymore. Over the next few days, the light in their eyes grew stronger, but instead of fear, the villagers began to feel peace. Wherever the sisters walked, lamps flickered gently, crops glowed faintly at night, and even the sick began to recover faster. People who once avoided them now left gifts at their door. Fruit, candles, little stars made from folded paper. They didn't understand what was happening, but they felt something changing. Lyra, Mira, and Nova continued to visit the observatory every night. Each time they tuned the radio or gazed through the telescope, they felt the same warmth, the connection growing stronger, reaching farther. One evening, as they watched the stars, Mira said, "Do you think the world will ever believe us?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Maybe not at first. But light always finds its way." They laughed quietly, their voices echoing in the silence of the night. And then, for the first time since the storm that marked their birth, the sky over Astra 9 changed. Stars that had once seemed distant now pulsed together, forming patterns, shapes of three small lights linked by golden lines, just like the symbols inside the buried chamber. Nova pointed upward, her eyes wide with awe. "It's us," she whispered. Lyra nodded slowly. "They're answering back." The observatory lights flickered, and the telescope turned on its own, aligning perfectly with the constellation. The radio emitted one final message before going silent. "The line is restored." The sisters stood together beneath the glowing sky, the wind brushing softly against their faces. Their hearts no longer felt heavy with fear. They knew, deep within, that they were never cursed. They were chosen to wake the forgotten bond between humankind and the stars. That night, they didn't hide from the light. They let it shine. It spread through the valley, touching every house, every frightened heart, reminding the people that there was more to life than what they could see. And for the first time in hundreds of years, Astra 9 was alive again. The old observatory had not shone with light for centuries, but that winter, it came alive. The hum of machinery filled the air, the sound spreading across the valley like a rising storm. Inside, the three sisters worked tirelessly, their faces lit by the glow of wires and glass. Lyra sat at the main control desk, turning ancient knobs with trembling hands. Sparks flickered as she tuned the radio, searching for the right frequency. Mira crouched by the power cells, her hair falling into her eyes as she repaired circuits that had been dead since their ancestors' time. Nova, the youngest, stood by the telescope, her gaze fixed on the night sky, her fingers tapping glowing keys as she sent coded signals into the darkness above. They had one goal: to reach whoever was listening beyond the stars. Outside, the wind howled through the village. The people gathered near the observatory, whispering in fear. "They'll bring ruin," one man said. "They'll wake something that should have stayed asleep." Another shouted, "They were born cursed. Leave the heavens alone." But the sisters didn't stop. They had seen the truth beneath the earth. They knew the light in their blood wasn't a curse, it was a link. A memory. A promise. Lyra looked up from her controls, sweat on her forehead. "We're close," she said. "The readings are rising. We're almost there." Mira adjusted the copper wiring along the wall, her voice calm but steady. "The power cells can't hold much longer. If they overload, the entire observatory could explode." Nova turned from the telescope, her eyes glowing faintly. "We can't stop now. We have to finish what we started. This signal, it's meant to reach home." "Home?" Mira asked softly. "You mean Earth?" Nova nodded. "Yes." The voice said, "We carry the signal to reconnect humanity. That means someone out there must still be listening." The machines groaned as if alive, their lights flickering wildly. The air smelled of metal and ozone. Static filled the room, loud and sharp. Lyra turned a final dial. "Hold steady," she shouted over the noise. "The frequency is aligning." Outside, the sky began to glow faintly, threads of silver weaving between the stars. The villagers gasped as the wind turned still, the snow frozen in midair for a moment. Mira looked at the readings on the panel. "It's happening." But suddenly the ground trembled. A loud crack split the air. One of the power cells burst into flame. Sparks shot across the room. Nova screamed and grabbed a fire blanket, smothering the flames. "Almost there," Lyra yelled. "We can't give up now." Mira ran to her side, pressing buttons, rerouting the remaining energy into the main antenna. All power to transmission. The lights grew blinding. The observatory's walls shook violently, dust falling from the ceiling. The telescope vibrated, its lenses glowing white. "Lyra!" Nova cried. "It's too much." Lyra's voice was steady, filled with determination. "Then let it be too much." The sisters joined hands, their combined light flowing through the floor into the machines. The circuits pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. The static turned into a steady hum, deep and beautiful, the sound of connection. Then, with a sudden burst of brilliance, a narrow beam of light shot upward through the dome. It pierced the clouds and vanished into the night. The villagers shielded their eyes as the beam painted the sky with gold and silver streaks. The whole valley glowed as if dawn had arrived early. Inside, the radio began to crackle. Static filled the air, then softened. Mira leaned forward, her voice trembling. Did it work? For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice, faint but clear, came through the speakers. "This is Earth Command. Astra 9, do you copy?" The sisters froze. Nova's hand flew to her mouth. Lyra's eyes widened. Mira stumbled back, tears filling her eyes. "Earth?" Lyra whispered. "They heard us." The voice continued, stronger now, layered with emotion. "This is Earth Command, Sector 3. We've been monitoring an unknown frequency for years. Your signal just matched our lost colony codes. Identify yourselves." Lyra reached for the microphone, her hands shaking. "This is Lyra Hale from Astra 9. We're descendants of the original settlers. We thought we were alone." Pause. Then the voice replied, "Astra 9? The colony survived? We thought it was destroyed in the Great Silence. How many of you are there?" Mira answered softly, "A village. Maybe a few hundred people." Nova's voice broke as she added, "We thought the stars forgot us." The radio buzzed for a moment, then the Earth voice spoke again, calm, warm, almost relieved. "No, Astra 9. The stars never forgot you. We've been searching for a century. Your signal, it means humanity is not broken. You've brought us back together." The sisters stood in stunned silence. The glow in their eyes matched the light of the beam still shining through the observatory roof. Outside, the villagers fell to their knees. They could hear faint echoes from the observatory, a man's voice speaking words they didn't understand, but somehow they felt them in their hearts. The fear that had gripped them for generations began to fade. Nova looked at her sisters, her voice trembling. "We did it." Lyra nodded slowly. "The stars have spoken back." For the first time in centuries, Astra 9 was no longer forgotten. The next few hours passed in a blur. The beam faded, leaving behind a soft shimmer in the sky, like stardust raining down. The machines grew quiet again, their lights dimming one by one. Mira checked the systems. "The transmission is complete," she said. "The link is stable, at least for now." Lyra leaned against the desk, exhaustion washing over her. "We reached them. That's all that matters." Outside, the villagers watched in silence. The same people who had once called the sisters cursed now stood in awe. Some cried, others simply stared at the heavens, whispering prayers of thanks. And far above, through endless miles of space, the signal from Astra 9 traveled, carrying not just data or sound but something deeper. It carried the voice of three sisters who dared to believe that humanity could still find its way home. The universe listened. And somewhere beyond the reach of time, Earth listened too. The next morning dawned quiet and clear, the snow around the village glistening like crushed glass under the rising sun. A deep calm hung in the air, not fear, not suspicion, but something new. Wonder. For the first time, the villagers did not whisper when they saw the three sisters walking down the narrow path from the observatory. They did not turn away. Instead, they stared in silence, unsure how to speak to the ones who had brought light down from the heavens. Lyra walked ahead, her coat dusted with frost. Mira followed, carrying a small device that still faintly glowed blue. Nova walked between them, her eyes bright with tiredness but also with something close to peace. No one dared to stop them. Even the old priest, who had once called them cursed children of the storm, lowered his head as they passed. The village square, usually filled with chatter, was still. The only sound came from the wind moving through the pine trees and the soft creak of snow under their boots. Lyra stopped by the old well at the center of the square. She looked around slowly. "They're not afraid anymore," she said, her voice soft. Mira nodded. "They saw what we did. They saw the light." Nova smiled faintly. "And they heard the voice." For a moment they stood there, three sisters who had once been hidden away, now standing at the heart of their world. By midday, travelers began arriving from nearby towns. Then came scientists, men and women with strange instruments and long coats. They climbed the snowy hill to the observatory, eager to see where the light had come from. When they entered, they found the sisters waiting. "You must be the Hales," one of the scientists said, his breath fogging in the cold air. "The ones who sent the signal." Lyra nodded. "We only followed the message we were given." "What message?" another asked. Mira handed him a worn notebook filled with symbols and lines. "We received it through an old radio. It said we were chosen to reconnect humanity." The scientists exchanged uncertain glances. "Reconnection," one murmured. "That's what the lost colonies were meant for." Nova watched them carefully. "You mean there are others?" The man smiled slightly. "Not many. But you're the first to reach back." For hours the scientists examined the machines. They tested the telescope, the power cells, and the strange patterns carved into the floor. Yet what fascinated them most wasn't the technology, it was the sisters themselves. Every reading showed a faint pulse of energy flowing through them, the same signal they had sent to Earth. It was as if the link ran not just through the observatory but through their blood. When the scientists left that evening, one of them turned to Lyra and said, "You three aren't cursed. You're living proof of humanity's connection to the stars." Lyra smiled. "We've known that all along." That night, the sisters climbed to the roof of the observatory. The sky above Astra 9 was alive. Thousands of stars twinkled like fireflies, and faint lines of light shimmered where their signal had once traveled. Mira wrapped her arms around herself, breathing in the cold. "Do you think Earth will come for us?" Nova looked up, her eyes reflecting starlight. "Maybe not now. But they know we're here. That's enough." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the observatory beneath her feet. "For centuries people called us cursed. But maybe the real curse was forgetting where we came from." The others nodded. Below them, the village lights flickered softly. No one hid indoors anymore. Children pointed at the stars, asking questions their parents could finally answer. The fear that had divided them for generations was gone, replaced by curiosity and hope. The sisters had given their world something greater than light. They had given them belief. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Astra 9 spread far and wide. Messages from Earth arrived through the radio, filled with excitement and promises. They spoke of rebuilding the old network, of sharing knowledge once thought lost forever. For the first time in 1,000 years, the bridge between Earth and its distant children was open. One evening, as the sun sank behind the snowy peaks, Lyra stood outside the observatory, watching the horizon. The orange light bathed her face in warmth. She could hear Mira inside, laughing softly as Nova tuned the radio. "Lyra." Nova called. They're sending another transmission. Lyra stepped inside, smiling. What does it say? Nova turned up the volume. A voice came through, clear and steady. To the people of Astra 9, your signal was received across multiple colonies. You have reminded us of who we are. We will not forget you. Mira wiped her eyes. They sound human. Lyra nodded slowly. Because they are. That night they celebrated with the villagers. Fires burned in the square. Music echoed across the hills. The same people who had once thrown stones now brought food and gifts, thanking the sisters for saving them from their own fear. As the flames danced, Lyra whispered to her sisters, "We didn't just reach Earth. We reached their hearts." Nova smiled, her gaze drifting to the stars. Then maybe this is what the message meant all along. What do you mean? Mira asked. Nova's voice softened. It said we were chosen to reconnect humanity. Maybe it didn't just mean technology or signals. Maybe it meant people. They stood together, watching the smoke rise into the night sky, blending with the shimmer of starlight. When the celebration ended, the sisters returned to the observatory one last time. The machines were quiet now, resting after their great work. The telescope pointed toward the stars, waiting for the next call. Lyra placed her hand on the metal frame. We did it, she whispered. Mira nodded. And it's only the beginning. Nova closed her eyes, feeling the gentle hum beneath her palm. The stars aren't so far anymore. Outside, dawn painted the sky in pale gold. The world felt new, alive with promise. The three sisters stood side by side, their eyes glowing softly in the morning light. They were no longer cursed. They were no longer hidden. They were the bridge, the living link between Earth and the stars. And as the sun rose over Astra 9, the heavens above shimmered faintly as though smiling down upon them. Somewhere across the endless dark, Earth smiled back. The end.